Hello, my name is Phil. Let's talk about movies. Welcome back, everybody. If you like music and movies, this is the channel for you, so make sure you subscribe. I am thrilled to welcome the boys on film, our new boy on film, very good friend of mine, Paul Joseph. How are you, Paul?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I was going to say a mutual fan of horror as well, because there aren't many of those around.
No.
Maybe we could talk about a horror film soon.
We should, yeah.
We're not talking about horror today. We are talking about a film that we saw at the UK Gala screening at Picture House Central. It was an amazing night. The film is called Annette, a musical romantic drama film directed by Leos Carax. I think it's his English feature debut. He had a short that was out a few years ago, but you were telling me more about him because I'm not as familiar with his work as you are. You've seen Holy Motors, which starred Kylie Minogue, which came out, I think, 2012?
Yeah, so that's probably what the gays would be familiar with it because it's got Kylie in it, but he's kind of in a small role, and I think he kind of only seems to do a film like every 10 years or something. He really doesn't do them very often.
I said to you, he's like the film version of Kate Bush, releasing something every 2 decades or whatever.
I would definitely say for anyone who saw Holy Motors, even though it is, when we'll talk about it, it's very odd in many ways and it's very artfully done. It's a lot more cohesive in terms of narrative. So I think if people saw Holy Motors and appreciated the weirdness of it and how great it looked and everything, but were a bit befuddled by the plot, I don't think they need to worry about that for this film.
It is his first film in a while. I think it took 8 years, didn't it, to make this film. We saw a Q&A after with Leos, and he was talking about the making of the movie. It's only a 20-minute Q&A, but it was really fascinating to see how it came about. And obviously it's got a screenplay by Ron and Russell from Sparks, who have created an amazing soundtrack for this film. Again, we'll come on to that too. But it centres around a stand-up comedian who, the comedian is played by Adam Driver. His opera singer wife as well, Marion, can never pronounce the name, Cotillard.
Cotillard. I think it helps you just put on a sort of hello accent. Cotillard. Cotillard.
And it centres around how their lives are changed once they have a baby. And the baby is not your typical baby either. It's done in such a kind of fantastical way. It's obviously involving puppetry, but I think there's a very good reason for that. There's a couple of good reasons for that.
Well, interesting, when it starts off, they sort of break the fourth wall right at the beginning and kind of almost stand outside the film, but then they gear you up for this big plot that is big beats, plot point, a couple who are both very successful but seemingly very mismatched in terms of how they are, but very connected to each other, and then things change, things go wrong. The story on paper is probably quite simple. It's just odd. Like there's one particular element of it around the child that's very odd, but the way it's done and the way it's presented is kind of really original, I'd say.
Yeah, it's compelling, isn't it? It really draws you in. I mean, it drew me completely into the movie as an experience. I think it is an experience kind of film. You need to see it on the big screen for starters.
Yeah, definitely. But
Adam Driver plays, I love the name as well, Henry McHenry. I mean, in a way, that's typical Sparks, isn't it? And they're obviously well known for their acerbic lyrics. So, there's a lot of that in this. He's obsessed by bananas and smoking before he goes on to do his stand-up show. And that's how the film starts. It starts with quite a lengthy comedy show. It's his routine, basically. And again, that's quite strange because the audience are part of the musical because there's not much dialogue in this film. It's all music pretty much, isn't it?
Performs comedy than just does stand-up. They have a really clever thing where the audience's response and their heckling and their shout-outs then slowly become more unison, and before you know it, it is a song, and they're like a chorus within it, and you've not really noticed that you're being led into song. And I said to you afterwards about how that's always the challenge with a film musical as opposed to a stage musical, is how you get into songs, because the convention of what you're watching on a stage, you already know it's not real. The classic is Mamma Mia, where it's like, oh, Chiquitita, tell me what's wrong, and then they get into the song. But yeah, in that there's lots of ways they really cleverly weave in, and then before you know it, what seems like a bit of a sort of response, rhythmic chanting kind of thing, before you know it, is a fully blown number with like backing singers and all this sort of stuff. It was brilliant.
Absolutely. And I think Sparks are the perfect band for this. It's the perfect vehicle for them in many ways because their music is very dramatic, obviously very, very melodic as well, but they've got the rhythm to a T. I mean, like you were saying about the audience, responding as part of the song, but you don't initially think that that's going to happen. It kind of just just blends seamlessly almost.
The music within the film is quite varied as well, but obviously there's certain themes that recur within it. But yeah, it's really, really well done, the music.
They've got that orchestral swoop, but they've got that melancholic feel as well, and also the drama. But I heard that Sparks were quite fascinated by puppetry anyway, so I wonder whether they were part of that idea to bring puppetry into the story here, because obviously the child is, well, people might not know. I guess when you've seen the trailer, you will see that it's not a human child.
And Leos Carax said that afterwards, that it was really important that it was puppetry rather than CGI or something, because obviously, you know, a baby can't act and CGI just looks weird. And all those films wherever they try to do that kind of like face CGI stuff, you know, like the Polar Express and those sort of things, it's inherently kind of creepy and it just doesn't work. So they managed to have this puppet of the baby, and there's a scene through the way they end the film where you get to see lots of the babies together, the different puppets. They have the baby at different ages through to kind of like being a toddler, small child, but incredibly expressive. It just has this, you know, the eyes, you know, are like, you know, so the mum will be singing a lullaby or something, or the parents talking, and it's fascinating. It just gives it such a character.
So brilliantly done, because you see Adam Driver's character Henry, he's out on his motorbike quite a bit, and you actually see one scene where the baby is with him. He's holding her, and she's moving her head slightly, and it doesn't take much movement for that puppet to seem like a real child, because it does. It comes across as like a real child, even though we know it's not. Yeah.
One of the things about it is that the child has a kind of remarkable gift. And is quite an extraordinary child, and it being a puppet facilitates that a lot more. It makes something that's very strange almost seem more normal.
I mean, the whole thing is beautifully staged.
She's an opera singer, he's a comedian who's kind of very deadbeat and kind of like, you know, bad boy, whatever, and then she's obviously a very successful opera singer who does those very big arty opera productions, which he kind of mocks quite a lot. He's like always going, she's really good at dying and bowing and dying, you know, every night she dies and then bows, and they don't really have as much stuff of her doing the opera as him in the comedy, but you do see all these amazing sets that would be in these big productions of the modern opera. And yeah, then there's that one where the set opens at the back to have like a forest, which you could almost imagine would be in one of those productions, but then it goes a step further. When she steps into it, she is actually walking around in a forest looking a bit lost, which that leads to, you know, something that I talked about when we saw it, is how at times it has this sort of weird fairy tale thing. Like in that point, it's a bit like there's a little Red Riding Hood thing going on, and also there's lots of scenes where she's just eating a big red shiny apple. It's not like the focus of the scene, but it just adds those little things of it looking a little bit like he almost has the big bad wolf element to him. Seeing this very loving and committed relationship, but it's a bit like star-crossed lovers. There's something not quite right. But again, I don't want to kind of like undermine it by saying it's one of those obvious fairy tale allegory things, because it certainly isn't.
It's very clever in the way that they have crafted that, because it isn't too much, like you say, it doesn't over-exaggerate that. But I think there is a connection with the puppet and also Henry's reactions to women. He doesn't seem to have that human connection or treat people very well. Treats them as objects.
I like all sorts of cinema, whatever. I do, you know, I'm sometimes a bit wary of art films, and I think there can be quite a lot of Emperor's New Clothes, and I think sometimes you get films that are maybe very arty, but it seems like that's sacrificed. What you don't get is necessarily the story or the engagement or something like this, and I kind of think this for me was one of those films that was very, from the beginning, laid out its stall, heart on its sleeve. This is a big, epic, you know, and it reminded me of films where someone manages to be really artful, but they rein it in such a way that the narrative isn't sacrificed. You think of films like, you know, Mulholland Drive or Beasts of the Southern Wild or Moulin Rouge, Kill Bill Part 1, even like Dogville, films like that kind of like I didn't know much about and went to see, and actually they're doing something quite different with the art form and taking some quite bold choices, but it all adds together to make something that's kind of like really, really compelling as a whole. And afterwards, you're just a little bit like, and it's really stayed with me in the couple of days since we saw it. And I keep thinking about it, and I've put the odd bit of the soundtrack song on Spotify and listened to parts of it. Definitely something I'm going to go and watch again.
I think this is almost like it's an art film that's touched with art film characteristics, but it still seems really accessible. So I think people should see this, even if they're thinking, judging by the trailer, that just looks completely bonkers.
You know, if you think about, like, in the horror genre, stuff like The Witch, or what was the horror film that came out a few years ago about the with the woman who had the dress that was like possessed. Was it In Fabric? Did you see that? Again,
Oh, I haven't seen that, no.
Or even like Suspiria and things like that. They're playing with the form, and they are, and standalone moments you could see, oh, that's art wanky type stuff, but actually it all drives the story. For me, it's the ones where it's like 5 stars, slow burning, searing narrative about a middle-aged couple in, just like, oh my God, like, whereas, these films like this, they're just like out there and kind of giving you it all. And, it's and I mentioned Kill Bill earlier, you see a film like a Tarantino film and a film like this, it's like no shot is wasted. Everything is really well considered and well framed, and there's several scenes, and again, I'm not going to describe them because I don't want to give spoilers away, but there's several scenes that as standalone scenes, technically the achievement is phenomenal. You're like, oh my God, like, and you almost don't notice they're doing that, then you're like, all that has happened in one take. There's one scene particularly with the conductor that we were talking about that I'm not going to say any more about, but they managed to, within just one scene and one shot, raise and lower the pace of what's going on, and it doesn't stand out because it's fitting along with the story, really, which is really important, and the emotion of what's going on.
I really love that scene. I really love that story arc with the conductor as well. I thought that was great. It was such a great addition to this film. We saw Ellen, who's from Mubi. She gave us the tickets to see the screening at the gala, and she described this as being a roller coaster of a movie, which I thought was perfect because it started off quite, that lengthy scene like I was talking about, the comedy scene that kind of gets you more of him as a character and makes you understand him as a character, and that seemed to play out. It was quite a long scene. I don't think it was too long, but it did change as the film went on, and it all made perfect sense as well. It started to make more sense as it went on. It didn't do the opposite. It didn't go completely out there and make you question everything. I think it made so much sense in a way, even though it was surreal.
Yeah, and there was a part of it where, probably one of the climactic scenes within the film that really drives the plot. That if you've seen the movie poster, it's kind of the scene where that happened, which is the two of them kind of waltzing on a boat. That whole part of it, at one point I thought it was then going to lead to a much more fantastical narrative. The tone of the film ends up being something quite different than it's reached.
It's unexpected, isn't it?
Yeah, and I was really surprised when the film ends. And I was, as I was saying to you, for me, perfect film is like 85 minutes, 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Like when I honestly, and it sounds really bad, but there's times I don't go and see a film because of the film length. I tried to go and see Avatar like 3 times, and then it was after work. We'd arranged to meet at the cinema at like 6:30, and we were like, oh, I just can't be bothered. I just can't. Like, it was really bad. Whereas this, I think the runtime, aside from the credits, was probably about 2 hours, 10 minutes, 2 hours 15.
Yes, 2:20, I think. Yeah.
At no point did I consider the time and what's going on, and I actually thought that the end, when the film ended, I was kind of thinking there was then almost going to be a whole other chapter to it. It ended appropriately and it was a very solid ending, but I kind of thought, oh wow, okay, so it's actually we've got through 2 hours 20 minutes, and it's.
I did hear you gasp actually as the credits started rolling. I was like, because I wasn't expecting that either. I was like, wow, okay, that's over.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned the credits though, because I think people should stay for the credits because it adds a nice human feel to the end, which shows how passionate the filmmakers were as a team. Because I'm not going to say anything, but just stay for the credits. Stay for the credits.
They have a really nice kind of breaking the fourth wall thing that tops and tails the film. So at the beginning, you're a bit like the way the first number is. You're a little bit like, this is not. Where's this going? But actually, again, what it's doing, it's almost like a prologue and an epilogue they put in, don't they? As this sort of framing device it's really
almost like a theatre show that is involving you. It's like interacting with you in a way,
and it then gives you a sense of almost like a sort of theatre troupe of them, kind of like as a sort of troupe of players giving you this story.
Because I think this is a film that really taps into emotions and feelings. It's very sensory. It is bold. It is bonkers. It's not completely bonkers though. It feels quite visceral. I think it's definitely, like I say, one for the big screen. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was fantastic, and like Ellen said, a roller coaster of a movie that I was not expecting. I can't fault it. It's a 5-star. Yeah,
total 5-star. Like, it's great. Yeah, and I hope that. mean, obviously it's come out in a bit of a weird time for award season, in that sometimes more of the awards type stuff comes out towards the end of the year in that really obvious race to the Oscars. But maybe because of the timing of things and when the Oscars was this year, and that, everything's all a bit skew. So I hope that, like, pretty much most categories you could think lead actor, lead actress, supporting actor for the composer, music director, whatever. I'm not sure that the puppet would necessarily be nominated for best supporting actress, but
well, I don't know. I mean, there's another element to that which I think deserves a nod. We can't say what that is.
Yeah.
Because, like, we were talking about this after, when we had a walk after the film, and I said normally I'm a bit picky about children in films. Because it draws me out of that experience, because I start believing the characters, and when sometimes with child's acting, I know that they're acting.
Yeah, and when you get like really good kids in films, that's amazing. When they're not, that really, as in any bad acting, but it's more likely to happen with a kid, or they're more likely to be just a bit annoying. But yeah, there's the how they present this character in a couple of different forms is really interesting.
And the music sounds like it was recorded live. I mean, I said that to you afterwards. It felt like it was a live recording. I don't know if it is, but if it wasn't, that lip syncing was amazing.
Yeah. There's a quite an intimate scene at the end, isn't there? Where the two characters are singing to each other, and it's it would be, if it is lip syncing, it's phenomenal.
Just gave me goosebumps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 5 stars from us. Paul, brilliant to see you, and thanks so much for coming to the screening as well. Hopefully you're going to join me for some horror stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Because I know Raj and Sean won't want to do that. Well, actually, Raj more is into horror, but not Sean. Definitely not Sean.
Is upon us, so let's see what comes out.
Good to see you, and thank you everyone for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon for Boys on Film. Bye for now.